Hey everybody, this is the third video in a row tonight. Yes. And tonight I wanted to show you this Piatnitzkysaurus that I fixed up. Yes, I looked up how to pronounce it because at first I was pronouncing it Planitsky, but it's Piatnitzkysaurus. Who the fuck names these animals? It ain't like rhinoceros, you know what I'm saying? Where like rhinoceros is like the most generic animal name because they looked at it and said, hey, what do we name this animals? Nosehorn. Perfect. Because that's what rhinoceros translates to is nosehorn. But, yeah, Piatnitzkysaurus. Well, once you get it down, it actually is kind of unique. Both of an animal and the name for it. So, what did I do exactly to this figure? Well, all I did was pretty much give it a paint job and add these two little, I don't know what you would call these, like whiskers? Not really whiskers, like, what is it called? Like a elongated feather stem growing from the snout. Something of that nature, anyway. Which ain't really all that unplausible. I mean, if you think about it, what is the general thesis that all theropods ancestrally had feathers due to one of the earliest theropods that we knew of, and one of the earliest dinosaur ancestors in general that we knew of, apparently having a coat or a small coat of protofeathers. So it's reasonable to assume that protofeathers, or just feathers as I call them, I don't know why we add the proto to it. A feather's a feather, you know. I guess you could say that those types of feathers would be as predominant in dinosaurs as they would have been in mammals, logically, with, of course, some exceptions. I mean, people are ridiculous when it comes to this debate. I mean, it only makes sense to me, you know? Having these big friggin' scaly lizard things walking around doesn't make nearly as much sense to me when these animals weren't related to lizards. And just because crocodilians had scales doesn't really make a whole lot of a difference because crocodiles are considerably different animals, even if they are related. So, honestly, my thoughts for this sort of design and feathers is you could say that the scales on these types of theropods are just modified feathers. And before everybody's like, what the? Before everybody goes freaking out on me, as some people do, especially little kids, Jesus Christ, you try to teach them anything these days, they start squealing at you like pigs. Filthy swine. Anyway, pretty much my thesis on it is that similar to a chicken's feet scales, many people may not know this, but a chicken's feet scales are actually modified feathers. They're not true scales like a lizard. Which, when I first learned that, probably like 5 or 6 years ago, when I first learned that, I was shocked. I was like, whoa, that's wild. I would have never have guessed that. But yeah, the scales on most bird feet are modified feathers. Which, looking at these, they're kind of a similar shape. More or less, anyway. You could say that the ancestor of this beast was at one point feathered, and for one reason or another, its evolutionary adaptations led it to having this sort of modified feathery design. Or you could just say that it had regular scales. Who really cares? But as for what I did with this, I pretty much just gave it a regular repaint. I added all this sort of kind of light snot green color. I painted this, like the little comb of spikes here, and I did the little wattle underneath the neck. I painted this up completely because it was a really ugly orange beforehand, and they only put orange on here. They didn't do it on the underneath there. These little bumps are from the drying pieces of paint, which I think adds to it decently. I just did a regular pattern, took the one color and then just kind of did the red underneath and then add some spots to make it look like it's more divided. The little sensory feathers, I guess you could say here, are again wire that I attached to the end of the snout via E6000. And yeah. Then I think the best thing on them was the repainted the eyes, because they were, first of all, they were crooked as hell to begin with. And then what I did was, or what they were originally was just yellow with like a pupil pointing backwards because for some reason they like dinosaurs looking behind them. Never understood that with Mattel. Personally, I like my dinosaur's eyes to be facing forward, as in they're engaging something. Makes it more interesting of a figurine, don't you think? But, yeah, all I did with that is pretty much, I just did a thing of red overneath, and then I did or overneath, God, my English is terrible. Which is stupid, because it's the only fucking language I speak. You'd think I'd be decent at it. I mean, I know some American Sign Language, but, that ain't really nothing to be bragging about. Just the basics. I know, like, a good 3/4 of the alphabet. But anyway, enough about me. Back onto the dinosaur. So as you can see, it's red with some black. And then it's pretty much the same thing here, more or less. Maybe a little bit sloppier done, but I think it looks fine. I did the inside of the mouth because, again, for some reason, they seem to forget to ever paint the inside. They usually just leave it the same color as the regular plastic. So I did that, and then I glossed it up nicely, give it some extra life. I just realized on these little quills, this one seems to be missing a bit of paint, which is fine because the red I used is right here, and I could just add a little bit more. Then I could Mod Podge it later. And then for the rest of it, I did a wash of the same kind of color, same sort of snot Nickelodeon Gak type green, and I just kind of put my thumb over it once I wiped it on there, and I took my brush and I dipped it in water, and then I ran it along here, right? Once the paint seeped into the cracks, I took my thumb, wiped it off, and that's how it seeps into these cracks and makes that look, for anybody who was wondering. Then I painted these stripes down the tail, because, again, they never bother to paint the tails in a lot of these figures, except for the Hammond collections, and even then, you're kind of lucky, if they even do that. And then I did the same sort of design down the arms, which, by the way, these arms are ripped as hell compared to most of the theropods that Mattel creates. Most of them look like they're starving to death. This dude, he's been hitting the gym, he's doing good for himself. Good on you, Piatnitzkysaurus. Good on you. You're keeping yourself in good shape. Then, of course, I did the nails in a jet black with some gloss. Painted the dew claw there, as you can see. And, I painted the ribs in sort of this sort of color that kind of runs through. I think it looks fine. Nothing perfect, but it's decent. Then, of course, I glossed up the schnostrils. Yes. With these big-ass banana teeth. Anyways, so there's the Piatnitzkysaurus. Fixed them up a little bit, and I figured I'd show them to you. Either ways, everybody have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.